It was one of those evenings when the world seemed to move in slow motion. Golden light spilling through the windows of the small cafe on Maple Street. Laughter echoing from distant corners, and the faint aroma of roasted coffee hanging in the air. Ryan Blake sat by the window, staring at his half-empty cup, unaware that this would be the day his heart would learn the hardest, yet most beautiful lesson of his life. He didn't look like someone who got his heart broken easily. Broad shoulders, quiet confidence, and that kind of soft gaze that made people trust him instantly. But the truth was, Ryan had been carrying an emptiness inside for a long time, one he didn't even realize until he met her, and then lost her before he ever had her. If you believe in kindness, destiny, and the power of second chances, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Hopeful Stories, because this story will remind you that sometimes the heart knows what the mind refuses to see. It began on an ordinary Tuesday. Ryan had just moved to Seattle from a small town in Ohio after getting a job as a graphic designer for a startup. The city was louder, faster, and lonelier than anything he'd known before. He spent most of his evenings at a quiet cafe called the Harbor Brew, sketching ideas in his notebook. That's where he first saw Mia Turner. She walked in with the kind of presence that turned heads, confident, radiant, and completely out of reach. She wore a navy blue blazer, her hair tied back, eyes sharp as though she carried the whole world's plans in her head. Ryan, sitting in his corner, couldn't look away. She ordered black coffee, no sugar, no cream, and sat across from him, not noticing him, not even once. But over the next few weeks, they kept crossing paths. Sometimes she'd sit next to him, both working silently. Other times, she'd ask for the sugar he never used. Slowly, they began exchanging small smiles, polite nods, and eventually, words. Ryan learned she worked as a financial consultant, ambitious and independent, someone who believed emotions were distractions. Mia learned he was an artist, grounded, a dreamer who found beauty in simplicity. They couldn't have been more different. Where she lived in the rush of deadlines and meetings, he found peace in sunsets and sketches. Yet, against every odd, they started spending time together, coffee after work, walks by the lake, sharing stories about childhood and fears they never told anyone. Ryan fell for her deeply, quietly, and completely. But Mia? She saw him as someone kind, maybe even sweet, but not her type. She told him that one evening by the lakeside, the city lights shimmering in the water. Her voice was calm, almost apologetic, but the words still cut through him. Ryan, you're not my type, she said. You're too soft, too kind. I need someone who matches my pace, someone who pushes me, not someone who waits for me. Ryan smiled, even though every part of him was breaking. He told her he understood, because he did. He'd seen how fiercely she lived, how fast she moved through life, afraid of stopping long enough to feel. He wished her the best and walked away that night, his reflection in the lake looking more broken than he felt. Weeks passed. Ryan threw himself into his art, painting faces he couldn't forget. One face, really. He stopped going to Harbor Brew because every corner of it reminded him of her. He told himself he'd move on. But fate, it seems, had other plans. It was a rainy night when they met again, by accident. Ryan had taken shelter under the awning of a bookstore, waiting for the rain to slow down, when he saw her across the street. She looked different, drenched, lost, holding her phone like it was her only connection to sanity. Without thinking, he ran across the street, through the downpour, and called her name. When she turned, her eyes widened, not in surprise, but in relief. Something had happened. Her father had just been rushed to the hospital, a heart attack, and she didn't have her car. Ryan didn't hesitate. He took her hand, led her to his car, and drove her there. That night changed everything. In the sterile white hospital room, Mia sat in silence, her usually composed self crumbling. Ryan didn't say much. He just sat beside her, holding her hand, letting her cry. Hours passed like seconds, and when the doctor finally came out with good news, her father would recover. Mia broke down completely. Ryan stayed, making sure she got home safely, waiting until he saw her lights come on before driving away. The next morning, Mia texted him. Just 2 words, thank you. That became the start of something new. Slowly, she began letting him in, not as a distraction, but as a quiet anchor in her storm. They met for coffee again, but now their conversations ran deeper. She told him things she'd never shared, about the pressure she felt from her job, her fear of failing, and how her father's illness made her realize how fragile life was. Ryan listened, never trying to fix her, just being there. It was during one of those talks that Mia said something that stayed with him. You know, sometimes I think I've been running my whole life. You're the only person who doesn't make me feel like I have to. Ryan didn't respond, just smiled, because sometimes silence speaks the loudest truths. As months went by, their bond deepened. But love, real love, isn't born out of perfect moments. It's built through the cracks, the uncertainties, and the quiet understanding that two imperfect people can still choose each other. Mia began to see in Ryan something she had never valued before: steadiness. He didn't chase success the way she did, but he had a peace she longed for. When she had bad days, he didn't offer solutions, he offered presence. When she doubted herself, he reminded her of who she really was. One night, she came to his apartment unannounced. He was painting, lost in color and music when she walked in. She looked exhausted, emotionally drained, eyes glistening. She sat on the floor beside him, watching him paint in silence. Then, almost whispering, she said, "I told you once that you weren't my type. Maybe I didn't know my type." Ryan froze. He turned to her, and for the first time, saw in her eyes what he'd hoped for all along. Not pity, not curiosity, but love. They didn't kiss that night. They didn't need to. Some moments are too sacred for words or gestures. For the next few months, they became inseparable. She introduced him to her world of boardrooms and business dinners. He introduced her to his world of art galleries and late-night drives. Their worlds collided beautifully, chaos and calm learning to coexist. But life, as always, tested them again. Mia received a promotion offer, one that required her to move to New York. It was everything she'd worked for. Yet, when she told Ryan, her voice trembled. He smiled, told her go, to chase it. "You've always belonged to the sky, Mia," he said softly. "I'll never hold you down." She left a month later. They promised to stay in touch, but distance has a way of changing everything. Calls turned to texts, texts to silence. Ryan missed her, but he never reached out. He wanted her to find her dreams, even if they didn't include him. A year passed. Ryan's art career flourished. One of his paintings was chosen for an exhibition in New York. He went, hesitant, unsure, but when he stood in that gallery, surrounded by strangers admiring his work, he saw her, Mia, standing in front of a painting he'd made, her portrait. The piece was titled Fate's Plan. She turned when she felt his presence. For a moment, neither spoke. Her eyes were teary, her hands trembling. "You painted me," she whispered. Ryan smiled faintly. "You changed me." She told him she had come to the gallery by chance, or maybe fate, that she had tried to move on but couldn't. That every time she saw something beautiful, she thought of how he'd see it. She said she missed the calm, the kindness, the way he made her feel enough even when she wasn't. They walked out of the gallery together, silent, letting the city lights wash over them. And for the first time in a long while, they didn't need to rush anywhere. Fate had done what it always does, brought two hearts back when they were finally ready. Months later, Ryan moved to New York. They didn't promise forever. They just promised now. And sometimes that's all love needs, the courage to stay in the present, to choose each other again and again. Because love isn't always fireworks or fate written in the stars. Sometimes it's a quiet voice that says, "You're not my type, but maybe you're exactly what I need." If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Hopeful Stories. Your support helps us keep spreading messages of love, hope, and second chances. Speech Balloon special request. Tell us in the comments. Do you believe fate brings the right people back at the right time? And as the screen fades out, imagine the last scene, two people walking down a rain-soaked street, holding hands, laughing softly. The kind of laughter that says, "We made it." Because sometimes, even when someone once said, "You're not my type," fate gently whispers, "But you're meant to be."